everyone. So this is the kind of a tutorial on how to work with these characters in, or these models rather, I guess, in Substance Painter. Generally speaking, when you load up Painter, the Painter file, you'll see something similar to this for the characters. For other things, it might be more filled in. What we've got here is the default texture, which was not made in Painter, which is why it's set like this. It's basically the maps on the base color here and the roughness. The metallic is, there's no metallic, so that's no map required. And the normal map right here. Normal map is also over here, but it's set to replace, and we're using this one because in the end, and this may or may not be there. If it isn't, you create a new folder, and you can call this just normal mask if you'd like, and then create a fill layer here. In the fill layer, select only the normal map, leave that there, and go to your layers in the top left corner. Select the normal layer, and we're going to call set this to replace and set the normal mask folder to pass through. And now we can add a black mask on that, and then anywhere we want we can paint out the normal map. So if you want to replace the normal map on, say, this part, you can do that and replace it with your own normal map. If that's a black mask right there, completely black, then it will have zero effect. So you can either turn it off or you can just turn it on and have zero effect. But it's there for you if you want to replace the mask, the default normal, with your own mask, and then you can set your own. Anything you do above that, above this layer, like literally above, will be replace that out. So next, you may or may not have a color ID map. For some of the creatures, you probably will. For the stuff that already has a color ID that works fine, like this one over here or whatnot, and you won't. And this is because I wanted to redo the color ID. The original color ID worked for the original character here, but I'm going to be doing a new texture that does not look the same. It's going to have slightly different organic patterns on the top and bottom, and on the legs segments here and whatnot. So I'm going to go ahead and go through that, and you'll also notice, of course, the model. This one I've separated the parts so that it's a little easier to paint around the parts that you otherwise wouldn't be able to see. But we are using maps that were baked from the combined mesh before it was separated. So I'm going to finish this color ID. I need to add some leg segments, and then I'll show you how to add a more organic pattern with a mask. All of this is going to be used in the Substance database or Substance Designer application in order to make our game-ready Substance file that we can modify in Unity at runtime. So I'm going to speed up the video for the rest of this. I'm just going to finish up the color ID here. I'm going to export the, I already got the location set up here. I'm going to export just the document channels. I'm really only looking for the diffuse here. And then I'm going to go into Photoshop with that. I'm actually going to load up this one. I already have one I previously exported and worked with, so I'm just going to copy this one on top of that. And I'm just going to make sure the colors are right here. I'm really only interested in this area. These are the new things I've added, so I'm going to delete everything else. And it's important to keep the color ID, the actual color values, correct based on the list that you can find online. So we're going to select this color range right here, and make sure that's a correct value. So this is supposed to be 128. And we'll just fill in this and make sure that it's accurate thing. So it's not the most accurate paint, so I'm gonna just look So again, select color range again, increase the fuzziness a little bit, not all the way. There we go. New layer. Make sure this is 255 128, and we'll fill that in there. And then choose the purple. It's fine. We will, however, deselect all this. We don't want to worry about that. And to make sure this is as accurate as possible, we'll just select the areas above this as well. On the new layer underneath that other previous layer, make sure this is accurate. Colors 128 and 255. There are, of course, many ways to make color ID maps. We're going to save this one as PNG. Place original PNG. Sorry, PNG. We're just going to drag this into Substance Painter down here at the shelf. Choose this is going to be a texture, and we're only going to use a current session. Once we apply it, it will stay. So we're going to take this and move this up here to the color ID section. Alright, so now we can turn this off and we can work with the map as we've written it. So the next step will be to check my disk space. Good. Next step will be to add the texture itself. So I'm going to actually turn off this base texture. I have a pre-made smart material that I've been working on with the other spider, so I'm going to bring that in. I've done a lot of the heavy lifting already, so I don't have to aside 3 spiders, and I knew they all had to have very similar textures and designs. I basically saved the first one as a smart material. It's obviously not quite accurate, right? There's a lot of issues, but that's because the color IDs are slightly off, and that way I don't have to do a lot of the setup for all these the base skin and all this other stuff. I can just redo it from scratch from a preset start position here. So for my skin here, well, let me start by adding a white mask to this. This is the underside layer, and it's supposed to only affect the stuff beneath the creature. However, I don't want it to affect the legs or anything else. It's just the body. So there's a smart mask on the skin here, and then I'm going to add a black mask here. And this will basically allow me to paint on just the body, so that, make sure I got my UV, yep, it's allowing me UV. So I'll paint it white here. That way it will only affect the underside of the body itself, but won't affect the rest of the pieces. Alright, next we've got top side as well. It's a similar setup. We've got the actual mask right here, and that's based on the maps, and so that's going to be accurate to the current creature. But we don't want it on the whole parts. I'm going to add a black mask, remove it, and then I'm going to paint over where I do want to see it, which is going to be on. So now we've got that coming down on the body. Let's see, your stingers, color selection for the stingers, which are back here. Since the color selection has changed, we're going to remove that. I'm going to pick a color, this orange color, and now the stingers will be correct material. We do that just going up the exact same thing, every bit here. We've got the leg segments. Again, color selection. Whoops, color selection 1. Do this color right here. That gives it that red look. Leg segments 2. Color selection. That one. the purple. That gives us those. Like connections, this one we're going to add a black mask. We're just going to paint this one on. It's just a fill layer, but we're going to paint it on the connections where these little nubs connect with the body. So I'm going to select a dirt texture for this, and we'll just go down, do a flow down a little bit, just paint this on. A very organic pattern, basically. Alright, next one is head accents. This is like the other ones. We got the fill layer with a mask, and then this one we're going to add a black mask and ensure that we only get it on the head itself. So in this case, I'm going to take a more softer look for shape. Paint in the head. Bring it down a little bit, allow it to come down. Fill in all the head. I want to get this only on the head part and avoid this. So we have the head accent now, and we want to make sure we exclude the eyes on that. So I'm going to go over to here, my shape, just brush over the eyes. You can do this in Photoshop later as well if you notice if there's any mistakes, and there may be as we make the actual mask files, which will be used in Substance Designer. Alright, so now we've got our mask there. Dirtiness is just a general dirtiness. We'll keep that on for the old look. And front feelers, let's get the right color selection for that. Color. Right, and front leg things, which is pedipalps. This is actually Sarah. Palps. Color selection. Color. Color yellow. That red look. We could also add that to small pumps, but I think we'll leave that. And then for the eyes, color selection. Color, you can choose a color from the map as well. And now we've got the eyes as we like it. So now this character is textured, and oh, you know what? We didn't do one thing here. That's these something that doesn't happen with the rest of the spiders. That's these little spike things here. So I'm gonna see what these look like if I make them the same as the stinger. So I'll just add that color to the stinger. I decided I don't want it to be like that, so I'm gonna say maybe I'll try the Chelicera. No, that's Chelicera. The pedipalps. This color selection. Now it's more red. Okay, let me try it with the eyes. Maybe a little too reflective. That should be good. Like the Chelicera here. You know what? I can do one other method. No, actually, let me try the leg segments. Yeah. I'm going to do a new method of this. I'm just going to add a new folder, and we'll call this spikes. And we'll fill layer for that spikes. And in that fill layer, we'll add a mask with the color selection. Pick the color, or spikes, and then we go back to the fill layer. We're not going to adjust the metal, we're not going to adjust the rough or the height or the normal map, just dealing with the color. Just want to get a red, but like a slightly darker red than the rest. There we go. Alright, so now we've got a slightly different red, and you can of course adjust that with the another mask if you so choose. You could just duplicate this and remove the mask now. And add a color selection here instead of down there. Then make this color a little more, say, brown or something. And add a mask on it. Those are smart masks. I like to just play around with them. I'm starting to get a better understanding of what each one does, but it's nice just to be able to play around and just see the effect just almost live. Alright, so we'll stick with that. And now let's export what we need to use in Substance Designer. So there's the basic things that we're going to export are the document channels, and I'm going to save those in the correct spot here. So I've got exported maps. I'm going to call this Spider 3 old. It's going to export at 2048. Alright, now I'm going to turn off the old selection here, and I'm going to turn off the dirt selection that I had in this section. Taking a super clean spider, and we're going to export this as Spider 3 new. And then we're going to do one more export of the channels, and we're going to do the additional maps. This will give us our normal, or world space normal position map and color ID map. This color ID map. We're going to call this additional maps. Now we can actually delete some of these maps. So we got the two different normal maps versions. We're going to be using the DirectX version, and we can delete the metallic because there is no metallic. Delete the AO on the old because we're going to use the AO from the new for that. So we don't need the metallic with an OpenGL normal map there. Delete those. And for the additional maps, we only need to keep the world space normal position, and we'll keep the ID even though we have it somewhere else just for fun. So we'll use these in Substance Designer. Back in Painter here, I can turn back on the old if I so choose. We need to export the maps, the mask maps from our various things here, the underside, top side, leg connections, and head accents. So I'm going to right click on the mask here and say export mask to file. I'm going to call this my mask folder here, new folder, Spider 3. I'm going to call this head accent 1, and then on my other mask that I've drawn, I'm going to export that mask to file, head accent 2. I'm going to do something similar to the other ones as well. Alright, now that I've done that, I'm going to save my project and quit. We're done with Painter for now. Hide some code I've been working on, and we're going to bring up those maps that we just created in Photoshop. So let me start with the head accent here, and you can see how the map I drew. We're going to copy this and make sure our mode is RGB. So we can paste it on top, and then we're going to use multiply to go through. That way we mask out only what we want, and then we can see here we made some mistakes, so I'm just going to go through this right here, and in my background delete that. Actually, let's do it another way, I guess. I'll just fill it with black, and I believe the rest we can keep those. I just want to get rid of those ones, and then flatten this. Whoops. That, and then flatten that, and then save it as a bitmap. We'll do the same to the others. Alright, that's all we have to do for that. Next, we're going to start the Substance Painter, or Substance Designer setup.